Hi there. Welcome back to another Tuesday's Tips, and I know it's been a very long time since we've been here. Just kind of ran out of things that needed to be shared with Lightroom. Didn't want to waste y'all's time, but I do want to come back here when Lightroom does updates. And a couple of weeks ago, they did do an update that is worth mentioning. The normal stuff, bug fixes, new lenses have been added in. Some help for doing your backup storage and that sort of thing. Those have all been brought in. I'm not really going to get into that. That's all kind of administrative and self-explanatory. Plenty of resources online to figure that out if you have questions. The one thing that I do want to mention here is the addition of adaptive color profiles. Now, you'll remember that sometime last year, early on, I talked about color profiles. These are not presets. There's nothing that changes with the actual processing of the image. It's just how Lightroom reads the colors from your particular camera. It is step one in the creative process in my books because I want to at least start the edit with the end process in mind. And part of that is going to be the color profile that I use, whether it's color or black and white. They're both called color profiles. Pretty much things have stayed the same, but there have been two additions which I think are noteworthy and interesting, and it's the adaptive color profiles both in color and black and white. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So we're going to go ahead and get shifted over here. And you should be seeing Lightroom at this point. And I've gone in and found a couple pictures and then done basically a virtual copy. So I'm not doing anything with my original edit. These are actually straight out of camera. This is the first one that I want to talk about. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail. But if you'll remember, over here next to profile, you have what profile it comes into Lightroom as, and it will usually default to the Adobe color. And if you do the arrows here, you can go, and here's the new part, adaptive color, and then you go all through here, and these are basically your favorites, adaptive black and white. I don't usually go through this menu because it's very limiting. What I like to do, and we've talked about this, is go over here to that grid. And in case you missed it, profile, Adobe Color tells you what you're in, and then this grid over here. And that's going to bring up all your different profiles, and you see all these different options that you have. Again, these are not presets. Now, when I shot this, I did not have the updated version of Lightroom, so I did not have the adaptive presets. And what I ended up doing was doing Adobe Standard, which was a very low contrast, low saturation profile, and it actually matched what I was shooting in the field, and it allowed me to go in and do a lot of the things that I needed to do as far as local contrast, color saturation, that sort of thing. And I'm really happy with how the picture did turn out. But now that Adobe has added the adaptive color into Lightroom, we have these other options up here. Now, the thing to remember, all the profiles that were here before were set on pretty much a recipe, and they handled each picture the same. Regardless of what the input was, whatever these profiles were, and I can hover over them and it shows, it did a standard adjustment to the colors. And it's not really an edit, so it's not really an adjustment, it's an interpretation of the colors. The thing with adaptive is it actually looks at the picture, and there's some amount of AI technology that goes in with this. And you can make fun of the AI stuff, but since I still get to do my edit the way that I want to, I'm not totally opposed to this, and I think it actually does a pretty good job. Like I said, this is what I ended up selecting for the image that I shot the first time, and then did an edit that matched the mood and what I wanted. With adaptive color, if you hover over it, you see what's going on, and it's almost like it's bringing more shadow detail in. It's dropping the highlights. and it's changing contrasts in addition to reading the colors. Now, if we click this, we still have the amount adjuster, and we can kind of manipulate how much of that effect that we want to do over the Adobe Color. And what I like about this, I'll close this out. You will look down here. None of this has been altered. So we can still go in, we can still drop the highlights if we want, we can raise the shadows, we can do all kinds of stuff with it still. The adaptive color is just a color profile. And the same thing with adaptive black and white. Unlike the normal, which if you just click black and white, that's going to be the Adobe monochrome. One of the ones that I really like working in is the number 1, which brings the shadows up more, allows me to do more with the contrast. And I have some other favorites here that just kind of float from, scene to scene, things that I like. But again, with the black and white, it is done on a specific recipe. Now, the adaptive black and white is based on how the software views the image. And we're looking at the difference between Adobe monochrome and the adaptive black and white. Again, it brings some of that contrast back together, so it gives you a little bit higher dynamic range to work with, and I do really like that. I hadn't thought about doing this one in black and white. I didn't think that it would really come across well in black and white, but the adaptive black and white is a really good starting point for this, and I might at some point go back and look at this one as a monochrome image. Again, you can do the amount, and you can kind of change how that goes just to fine tune it to your tastes. If we close out of there, we're still in adaptive black and white, but if you look down here, none of the edits have been changed. You can tell by the little eyeball here that are all still subdued. This is all still as it was. The end result to this picture, that's what I ended up with the edit looking like. I wanted to get a real kind of deep, moody look with some deep shadows to it. The sun was hitting this, but it was a very dreary day when I shot it, and I wanted to capture that. And I think I actually could have gotten a little bit closer to that using the adaptive color, but that wasn't available at the time. So let's move on to my next one. And this is the edited image, kind of the same mood that I wanted. We've got the deep shadows here. We've got kind of the muted colors. We've got the deep foreboding sky, that sort of thing. This is what the image looked like straight out of camera. Now this one, I did go through and look at the different profiles Lightroom had updated. And again, came up here. It defaults to Adobe Color. The adaptive takes a couple of seconds to pop up because it's reading the image. It's seeing what material is there, and it's making a best guess on how it should be rendered as far as the colors. Normally, I probably would have gone with the standard because, again, I get to dial the contrast in the way that I want. That's Adobe Color. That's standard. It's very subtle. Landscape is one that I would use if I wanted to bring more of the color tones out. But the standard one just left me feeling a little bit flat. Adobe Color was not bad, and I probably would have defaulted to this if I didn't have the option, but I did have adaptive color, and you see right there how it really makes the shadows pop. And that goes with what my style is. Didn't really affect the sky that much. It brought the highlights down just a smidge, but the main thing is the actual landscape here got a lot brighter, a lot more detailed. The colors still look right. And if we close this out, nothing has changed over here. So I can still go in and do the complete edit the way that I want it done. But the idea with the color profile is it gets you closer to the vision that you have. Because right now, when you bring a raw image in, it's not a picture. It has to be interpreted. And there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret based on the end result that you have in mind. So that's what the color profiles are. They are not presets, and I cannot stress that enough. They are not presets. The adaptive black and white again, looks good, but because of all of the brush over this car, it's not something that I wanted to see in black and white because it becomes more difficult to make the car out. I actually needed that color separation. So there we go. You can see and make out the car, and it just makes more sense what you're looking at. But the adaptive black and white does a really good job. Again, it's dealing more with the shadows and highlights, and it's kind of drawing that contrast in, which is how I like to start an edit, is having less contrast in an image. So this works for my view. This is the default Adobe monochrome. You can see that that's going to be a very dark starting point. For this situation, I probably would have used my black and white 1, which is probably my all-time favorite black and white profile, and it does what I'm after in terms of contrast. It's brightening the darker areas. It's giving me more detail in those dark parts. So let's look at the difference between my favorite, which is the black and white 1. You can see it up here at the top, and what adaptive would do. It takes it that little step further. So yeah, the adaptive color and adaptive black and white profiles are something that I think are worth looking into. Again, they are not presets. Presets are over here. And these are all the ones that Lightroom puts in normal, just as part of the programming. You can go through and click a preset. Let's see, I don't even know how to work these because I don't mess with them that often. Here we go. So let's just say that we did spring 1. We had spring fever that day. It was just a couple days ago. It was cold, it was windy, it was rainy, but I had spring fever. So we've got modern 4, which is the profile that's been assigned to go along with spring season 1. But if you'll notice, we've already got things changed over here. White and black points have been set. Vibrance has been set. That's one of the last things I will mess with. Color mixer has been manipulated. Tone curve, color grading, and effects. All of these things have been adjusted. So now you have to go in and make sure that these adjustments are correct for you. Not something that I want to do. I don't like Lightroom making those kind of choices for me. So these are presets over here. I don't recommend them. I personally don't like them. But over here, we have profiles. Profiles are what I much prefer. And we can go in, we can do a different profile. But since we have assigned that preset, see, this is where it's problematic. Those adjustments are still here. And we would have to go in and zero out all of these different things. See what's done with the color mixer. See, all these things have been changed, and you may not know what has been changed, and it may be something detrimental to your image and your vision. So don't get those mixed up. You want to stay with color profiles, which are over here, that do not make changes to your adjustments. Leave the presets alone. So that's essentially what I wanted to get into. Again, nothing groundbreaking. It's just they've added 2 new color profiles that I think are very beneficial. Even though they are kind of AI driven, it's not taking that creativity out of your hand. You can adjust that amount, and the nice thing is it does base the changes on the picture as opposed to it just changes the color interpretation across the board regardless of the picture. You still have complete, total creative control over the edit. That's the important part for me. So with all that in mind, this is a minor update in Lightroom, but it is one that I think is going to be very beneficial, and I hope that you use this in your own edits. And that pretty much wraps us up today. I don't know when I'll be back for another Tuesday's Tips, but each time Lightroom does an update, I'm going to try to get familiar with it and then come back and report to you. Oh, and one other thing that I do want to mention, and let's see, let's go back in to Lightroom real quick. Let's see. All right, hopefully we're going to be back in Lightroom now. Let's just say that we've gone in, we've done an edit here, and just I'm hitting some things here just to get us here. Obviously not a great edit at all. We're going to go in and we are going to select subject. We're just going to do a quick mask, and it's going to do a kind of halfway job doing this. Okay, here we go. So let's just bring the exposure up on that just so we have something going. Okay. So now we've got basic adjustments done and we've got a mask done. Now what happens when we go in and we look for a sensor spot? And usually I have something around up in here. Well, let's just call this a sensor spot. It might be, it's very faint. And I'm just using the healing tool, very simple. So I've now done something over here with the healing, removal, and clone stamp. Okay, that's fairly typical. We're going to go in, we're going to clean up our image at some point. We're seeing now 3 red dots up here. We're used to seeing this one with the masking, and what that means is that something has changed with the masking and we need to update the mask because we have now done some kind of content change through that healing brush. So we open up the masks, we go to the 3 buttons over here, update AI masks. It's going to analyze, it's going to see what I did up here that may change the masking, and it's going to update the masks. That little red dot is gone. We're used to seeing that. That's not a problem. The new part here, and this is part of this update, and I had to kind of figure out how this worked. I had no idea. It has not been mentioned on any of the video channels that I look at for Lightroom, so I had to figure this one out on my own. So I'm going to share this with you. This, of course, is the slider panel for your basic tab, Global Edits. Now, because we have done adaptive color, and had we done adaptive black and white, the same thing would have applied. There is a certain AI-ness to that profile, and because I have changed pixels in it, it's saying, let's reevaluate. So that's what this is doing, and I wasn't sure how to reset it, but it actually is more simple than I tried to make it out to be. Right here underneath your adaptive color and the amount slider, we have update. Click that, it's analyzing, red dot is gone, we're back to normal. Fundamentally, I don't know what changes, but that one thing up here that I did with just the healing brush in the sky made Lightroom question its own choices and maybe question life. I don't know. But those are what you need to do to get rid of those little red dots. And that just makes sure that the image is cohesive, that there aren't any issues or problems with any of the AI tweaks that have been done. Because AI has become so intertwined, that is something we do have to keep in mind. So with that, I am now done. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And if there's anything that you would like to hear me talk about on Tuesday's Tips, please drop them in the comments, shoot me an email, let me know. I'd love to do some content that would help you guys out. So thank you, and happy shooting, happy editing. We'll see you next time. Bye now.